Hi students, today we are going to be doing Chapter 9, Section 1. Organic compounds. Organic compounds contain carbon and hydrogen, and they sometimes will contain other elements as well. So they can contain other elements. 90% of known compounds are organic compounds, and the reason why 90% of them are organic is because carbon has 4 valence electrons. So if you look at your periodic table, you'll see that carbon is in group 4, so it has 4 valence electrons, and that means it can make 4 different bonds, and so carbon is just found all around us. So a little bit more about carbon. There are 3 different types of carbon. 2 of them you're probably most familiar with. First is diamond, and diamond looks like this on the right. It's a very, very hard carbon. If you remember from the Mohs hardness scale, it's the hardest on that. Graphite is another form of carbon, and that's what you use in your pencils, and that's pretty weak, and it is bonded differently. It looks like this picture down there, and so it's bonded differently, which is why it's not as strong. And then there's a fullerene. Fullerene, or what they call a buckyball, and it is shaped like this. Saturated hydrocarbons. Saturated hydrocarbons are hydrocarbons that contain all single bonds. And a hydrocarbon, by the way, is one that only has hydrogen and carbon. Only has hydrogen and carbon. So if you look at this picture, it only has hydrogen and carbon. And if you notice, they all have single bonds. That was back from a few chapters ago. Single bond just means they're sharing 2 electrons, and 1 dash means a single bond. So these all have single bonds, so it's a saturated hydrocarbon, and that's called an alkane. These are your saturated hydrocarbons. You should copy this table down in your notes because you are expected to know all of these. You should know the formula and the name. So you should know CH4 is methane, C2H6 is ethane, methane is a gas that, and all of these actually are gases, but that's, methane is a natural gas. Ethane, C3H8 propane, that's what's used for grills. C4H10 butane, that's what's found in a lot of lighters. C5H12 is pentane. C6H14 is hexane. C7H16 is heptane. C8H18 is octane. That is your gas that you put in your car is a mixture of gases, but a lot of it is octane. C9H20 is nonane, and C10H22 is decane. Unsaturated hydrocarbon, those have double or triple bonds. There are 2 different types that you need to know. Alkene contains double bonds, and alkyne contains triple bonds. So if you notice on the left, we've got a double bond here, so that is an alkene, and then on the right we have a triple bond, and so that is an alkyne. Fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are a mixture of hydrocarbons that formed from remains of plants or animals. We did, you may have heard those before. They're talked about a lot. There are a few different types of fossil fuels. The first type is coal. North Dakota has a ton of coal, and there are different types of coal. There are actually more than what I'm going to tell you here, but peat is a type of coal. Lignite is another type of coal that's about 50% carbon. Bituminous is another type of coal that's 70 to 80% carbon. And anthracite is another type of coal that's more than 80% carbon. Coal is used as a fossil fuel, so it's used for energy. The higher the percentage of carbon, the cleaner it burns. The lower the percentage, it burns kind of dirty, which is bad. Natural gas, which I told you before was methane, 80% of it is methane. So coal and natural gas are fossil fuels. The third type that you need to know is petroleum, which is the same thing as oil. Combustion of fossil fuels. When you combust, it produces carbon dioxide and H2O plus energy. That we talked about back in chapter 7. However, you can have an incomplete combustion of fossil fuels. That just means that it's not getting enough oxygen, and that can happen in furnaces. So you have to worry about, if you have a gas furnace, you need to worry about making sure that it doesn't have incomplete combustion, because it can create carbon monoxide, which is why if you have a gas furnace, you need to have a carbon monoxide detector in your home. And it also creates acid rain. And that is it for today's notes.